My name is Michael Thompson. I am 47 years old. 24 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days ago, my own son stood in a courtroom in Harris County and pointed his finger at me, telling a judge and 12 strangers that I was responsible for something I never did. Today I walked out of Beaumont Federal Correctional Institution carrying a manila envelope my son had mailed to my best friend 3 weeks before my release, an envelope that named me solely beneficiary of his entire collapsed estate. What he did not know was that by the time he came looking for me, I already had every piece of evidence proving exactly who was responsible for the lie that sent me away. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you are listening from. Now let me take you back to the last morning I was truly free, and the moment my own blood chose to save himself at my expense. I taught Benjamin to ride a bike in a Kroger parking lot on Westheimer back in 1998. One hand steady on the back of his seat, the smell of hot asphalt and cut grass drifting across the lot. He used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long drives home, his small hand fisted in my shirt collar. I built a life in Houston working electrical jobs alongside my best friend Kyle Murphy since 1987, back when we were both broke and working the same sites in the 5th Ward. Kyle called me Mike, always Mike. In 37 years he used my full name exactly twice, once at my mother's funeral and once when he thought I was having a heart attack on a job site. That single syllable carried more warmth than most people manage in a full paragraph. Benjamin grew into a developer, built a business, married a woman named Ella. I was proud of him the way fathers are proud even when something quiet in the back of their mind senses trouble coming. I noticed the small things, how he avoided my calls once the business started struggling, how his voice grew thin whenever Ella's name came up. I did not yet understand how deep the trouble already ran, or what it would eventually cost me. 2 years ago, Ella lost a pregnancy after a fall in their home, and in the courtroom that followed, Benjamin stood up and told the judge, I was responsible. I do not know exactly what pushed him to say it. I only know that I went to Beaumont for something I never did, and my son did not visit me once in 24 months. The morning I walked out of that prison, Kyle was waiting in his truck with a coffee marked Mike in Sharpie on the cup, handwritten, not printed. He told me carefully that Benjamin had called him the day before, asking what time I was getting released, then told him not to mention it. Business is gone, Kyle said quietly. The company filed for bankruptcy in November. The house is gone. Ella left him around Christmas. Good, said the part of me I was not proud of. I did not say it out loud. That is the word men use for grief when they have run out of forgiveness to offer it instead. I took the envelope Kyle handed me and did not open it yet, watching Texas slide past the window, replaying the expression on my son's face across that courtroom 11,000 times, and finally understanding it for what it was. At Kyle's house, his neighbor Lucy Stewart, a paralegal with a mind like a steel trap, was already waiting with a laptop and a legal pad. Benjamin had named me solely beneficiary of his entire estate 2 years earlier, right around the time he sent me to prison, and filed the paperwork with probate court 4 days before my release. Then Lucy told me something that changed everything. She had obtained hospital records from St. Luke's Medical Center dated March of that year, Elia's own doctor's notes describing acute trauma consistent with a fall and traces of cocaine in her system from second-hand exposure in her immediate environment. It was never me, Lucy said. Quietly, and somewhere in a rental house in Pearland, Benjamin knew exactly whose fault it actually was. I sat with that on Kyle's porch for 20 minutes, holding the legal skeleton of my son's collapsed life in my hands, understanding with cold certainty that for the first time in 24 months, I held every card in this game. I just did not yet know how I intended to play them. Benjamin arrived at the wrong address 20 minutes later, thinner than I remembered, depleted rather than lean, looking like a man who had stopped believing he deserved anything good. Dad, he said. I told him. Benjamin, full name, and watched the flinch move across his face. He asked me to sign the remaining property holdings back over to him so he could negotiate with creditors before he finished. I told him I knew everything. The hospital records, the cocaine, the fault that had nothing to do with me at all. His face drained of color. "I was scared," he said. "So was I told him. Every single day for over 700 days in a federal facility. But here I am." I wish this had gone differently. I wish my own son had been the kind of man who stood up in that courtroom and told the truth, instead of pointing at the one person who had never once failed him. But wishes do not undo 2 years in Beaumont. The truth does. I did not tell him it was okay. I did not tell him I forgave him. I told him to wait and to give me a few days to decide what I wanted to do with everything he had handed me. That night, alone in the guest room at Kyle's house, I sat with Lucy's report spread across the bed, reviewing every document one final time before deciding my next move. At 11:50, I called Lucy to confirm the full timeline was documented, the medical records, the probate filing, everything that would matter if this ever needed to stand up in front of a judge again. Just after midnight, I made my decision and wrote it down for Lucy to formalize in the morning, a full legal complaint for wrongful conviction based on newly discovered evidence, alongside a civil claim against Benjamin for the false statements that sent me to prison. 12:03 in the morning. I am 47 years old. I am, for the first time in 2 years, holding proof instead of grief. Across the city in Pearland, Benjamin was almost certainly still waiting by his phone, believing patience alone would eventually earn my forgiveness and my signature. He had no idea I was about to hand every piece of evidence he had given me straight to an attorney specializing in wrongful conviction cases. The next morning, Lucy filed the wrongful conviction petition with the Harris County Court, attaching the hospital records and probate documents Benjamin himself had unknowingly provided. Within days, the district attorney's office reopened the case, and Benjamin was called in for questioning about the statements he had made under oath 2 years earlier. He called me repeatedly that week. I let it ring when I finally answered. His voice had none of the composure he arrived with on Kyle's porch. He asked how I could do this to him. I told him he had done it to himself the moment he chose his own comfort over his father's freedom. He looked at me the way he always had growing up, expecting forgiveness simply because he asked for it. I did not give it to him. I had not been that man since the day I watched him point his finger at me in that courtroom. Kyle Murphy taught me something without ever saying a word about it, that showing up quietly, again and again, means more than any speech ever could. I always thought that was simply loyalty. I understand now it is the exact opposite of what my own son gave me when it mattered most. Benjamin's wrongful statement is now under formal review, and the original conviction against me was vacated within months. Based on the new evidence, Lucy Stewart continues handling the civil case on my behalf. As for me, I still have my name, restored in full, and a friend who never once stopped calling me Mike. I think about that courtroom every single day. I wake up a free man, and I think the truth does not need volume. It only needs time and someone patient enough to wait for it. If you have ever had someone you trusted completely choose themselves over you, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments, and if this one moved you, subscribe to Dad's Revenge Tales. There is more where this came from.